Hey folks, welcome back. Today I kind of want to look at Kanye West. I've got a couple of questions for my cards for Spirit about who he is, what he's here on Earth to do, that kind of thing. But first, I want to take a look at his astrological birth chart. Now, something I should note is that supposedly he was born at 8:45 a.m., and I'm just going to say right off the bat that it's extremely rare for a kid to be born exactly at 8 p.m., 7:30. You know what I'm saying? The 30, the 15, the 45. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but I'm leaving some room for doubt right there, okay? So, just in case he was born at 8:45, he was born supposedly at 8:45 a.m. in Atlanta, Georgia on June 8th, 1977. So that makes him a Gemini. So I have his birth chart right here on my screen, and I'll also link it down in the description down below along with the timestamps. I'm pulling it from astroseek.com. So right away, there's a lot going on in this chart, and I seem to say that for virtually every celebrity that I look at, and there's a reason why they're celebrities. Their birth charts are often they have quite a bit of activity going on in them, right? It may be part of the reason why celebrities become celebrities, okay? But all that aside, let's take a look at the aspect pattern that jumped out immediately to me. He has a cradle aspect pattern, which talks to me about being taken care of, even coddled throughout life through mother figures, if not through mom themselves, or through a motherly figure who they may have had growing up. Maybe not necessarily their mom. But I definitely know that his mom definitely looked out for him and his career and his singing abilities. I know that he is often surrounded by women who act as motherly figures who protect him. And I should say that was in his stars at the time that he was born, okay? And by the way, if you hear me say something that you're like, yeah, I know, we already know that, consider it confirmation, okay? I don't do a whole lot of research on these people. In fact, I often go in cold. I don't know that much apart from his more controversial stuff that he's been doing over the past couple of years, okay? So that cradle aspect pattern is significant in the sense that he's always going to be protected in a certain degree by the women in his life. And I say women because, one, that's where he's oriented, that we know of, okay? But also, part of that cradle aspect pattern is tied into his Pluto in Libra. His ability to be diplomatic, to be a lover, that kind of thing. And this is someone who finds it very easily to be seductive. In fact, it seems to come quite naturally to him, at least to the women who come in contact with him, whether as fans or as otherwise. It's easy to be seduced by him. There's just something mysterious and powerful about him, and that also creates that cradle that cradle aspect pattern that you see right there. So this is something that the women around him can't quite explain. Why is he attractive to you? Well, he just is. It's something that they may or may not say, okay? So that Pluto talks about what goes on beneath the surface. So he is quite attractive as a lover. He has quite an attractive pull as a lover. It also goes alongside, it has a trining relationship, a good relationship with that Sun and Jupiter in Gemini. So Gemini is going to be a very thought-provoking, intellectual kind of sign. And with that Sun in Gemini, yeah, he's going to be someone who enjoys intellectual stuff, has intellectual conversations, enjoys talking intellectual stuff, okay? With that Jupiter, that only increases that ability. So expands it even more, quite literally. It makes him drives him towards what stimulates him mentally. That's where some people might start to think of him as a genius. And you can see with that Black Moon Lilith in Gemini as well, that he really wants to be intellectual and he wants to be seen as intellectual too. That's like, let's see, the Jupiter and Black Moon Lilith are appearing in his 11th house. So that comes around to the people that he meets, like fans, for instance, acquaintances, friends, those kinds of people. He enjoys having really intellectual, mental conversations with people. And that goes along with his Pluto in Libra. That's a lot of air energy right there. And so what that is going to do is it's going to really draw in romantic interest to his intellectual abilities. Not only is he attractive in some way, it's his intellectual ability that finishes the work of that attraction, if that makes any sense. Excuse me. His sun is in Gemini in the 12th house. And as if he were intellectual enough, there is a degree of genuine intelligence, genius even, underneath the surface of it all. And because it lands in the 12th house of, typically associated with Pisces, that's going to be where his ideals are, and also where some delusions may be. It's not just genius that's right here with this sun in Gemini. It's also the potential for deep intuition, as well as delusions. There's the risk for both, or there's the possibility for intuition and the risk for being delusional when it comes to some things. Okay, allegedly for entertainment purposes only. Now, it's interesting that Sun in Gemini in the 12th house ties in positively a trining relationship. Or it might be a sextile. I'm so sorry. But it has a positive an easygoing relationship with that Saturn in Leo. So when he went through his Saturn return, he had to go through some understandings of what power, or he was supposed to have gone through an understanding of what power was bringing him. What being seen as the king of, let's say, hip-hop, for instance. I apologize if that isn't his genre, okay? Again, I live under a rock. I don't do that much research. I try to go in cold. But he had to have a bit, or ideally, he should have had a reckoning with the amount of power, with his kingship of being on top. It's a real risk that the people around him, his people, kind of prevented that Saturn return, as often is the case for VIPs, for celebrities. Their management teams, their PR teams kind of soften, diffuse situations for them, and they don't really have to work through their Saturn returns in the same way that you might say the collective might have to work through, okay? Work through our own Saturn returns. So that appears in his second house. That Saturn in Leo appears in his second house. It should have had an impact on his finances, what made him comfortable in his environment. That's the house of Taurus. So that should have done some kind of shaking up, and I don't know that it did. Possibly he lost some money throughout that process, throughout that reckoning process, but there's the real possibility that he didn't. We can do more research into that to see what his Saturn return was like. But it had an easygoing relationship with his Sun, and I believe it looks like his Jupiter as well in Gemini. And there may have been the real possibility that he was able to talk his way through his Saturn return in such a way that his Saturn return was greatly lessened. At the very least, his PR and management team did a lot of that work for him, okay? Excuse me with all the throat clearing. Now, just because he's got that cradle aspect pattern, a lot of women, motherly figures protecting him, even though he's into his 50s at this point. He's a grown-ass man. He can do his own protecting of himself. That doesn't mean that this is free of conflict. In spite of all these trines and these good relationships, with that, it has that oppositional relationship with his Neptune and Sagittarius in the 5th house. That's about creativity and about having great ideals and dreams and even delusions. We come back to those delusions with that Neptune. That has a difficult and oppositional relationship with that Jupiter and that Sun in Gemini. So when he greatly expands, again with that Sagittarius, when he goes into higher levels of thinking, or what he thinks to be thinking, that Neptune kind of makes things a little bit watery, not as easy to see. Also, Neptune and Sagittarius is kind of an oppositional relationship by itself, because that is fire and water kind of butting heads. If they are separated in ways that Gemini would allow for, that relationship might flow a little bit more smoothly. But the thing is, with that Sun and that Jupiter in Gemini, he may say some things that aren't that great. He may get his tongue may get himself into some trouble when it comes to what it is that he wants to do with all his creative imagination, his dreams, if you will. Now, again, his PR team, his management team, will do a lot of the smoothing of the way for him, and he might not feel the effects as much as someone else would if they had the same chart. But it definitely creates tension for him, and it's not something that he can easily get around. And this cradle aspect pattern, being coddled, protected by motherly figures in his life, including love interests, that's not going to lessen the effects of this particular opposition. He's got dreams about what it is that he wants to do, but he can't quite get there because things that he says gets him into trouble and makes it so that people are driven away by his creative visions. And something else I know is because the Sun in Gemini is in the 12th house associated with Pisces, and because Neptune, also associated with Pisces, is there in Sagittarius, I wonder if the stage wasn't set at the time that he was born for mental health to get in the way of both his intellect and his creative dreams. Okay? So something else I noticed is that his vertex, what was going to be really life-changing events for him, also appears in Sagittarius. So on multiple occasions, it seems that he has suddenly popped into the public eye. I remember when the Graduation album came out. I believe I was in college at the time when that came out, and I remember it just being everywhere. Suddenly, everyone was talking about Kanye West, and I would kind of expect to see that. Suddenly, things happen around him. And with like that Sagittarius associated with Jupiter, it expands him in the public eye on the regular. And especially when that fit in with the 5th house of creativity and playfulness and being in a childlike state, he's able to do a lot of really cool things in the creative sphere, be able to do a lot of even playful things, if you could go that particular route. And they bring him a lot of fame, and they bring him a lot of personal satisfaction as well. We're going to keep on going, and we could talk about this for quite some time, because this is his birth chart. This doesn't even cover a current transit chart, which would tell us more about what he's currently going through from an astrological perspective. We have his Chiron in Taurus in the 11th house. So Chiron in Taurus is about not being ever fully satisfied, no matter how much he has, no matter how much financial, material security he may have. It's never quite enough. He always wants more. He never feels fully satisfied. That's a wound that he was born with, and his stars say that he was born with. When it comes to his 11th house, there's something about seeing other people being successful, especially his friends and his fans, and about his love interests as well. He doesn't like it when those people appear to be more successful than he is, or that he feels. That creates a degree of jealousy that for him is pretty difficult to work with. And when you already have these oppositional tensions between his Sun and Jupiter in Gemini, and his Neptune his Neptune in Sagittarius, that's going to tend to make him feel like he needs to go in this particular direction suddenly in order to bring back a sense of security for him. Okay, now there's no explicit relationship between Chiron and those particular planets that I just discussed, but it does create an atmosphere of, and now I need to go this direction in order to bring attention back to myself, in order to get myself more material security so that I can feel more secure, but that security always eludes him. Okay, we should talk about what's going on in his 10th house. Now, this is interesting. His south node is in his 10th house. This is where he was coming from. I do seem to remember that his mom, Donda, Professor Donda, I know that much, really encouraged him to go to work on his singing career. And often, I believe that she bought like studio time for him to do some recording. I could be completely wrong, okay? I apologize if I am wrong, but I also noticed that his fortune point, is here in Aries in the 10th house. He was always meant to be famous, and Aries loves to be famous, okay? And especially with his fortune, he was going to find the things that made him genuinely happy and joyful here in being famous and being first. Okay, Aries loves being first. It's the first sign of the zodiac year. He enjoys this kind of attention. Okay, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Something else that's in his 10th house are Venus and Mars, and they're really close together. They're in Taurus, even though they're in his 10th house. Okay, so Mars is in Taurus. This is someone who is willing to put in the hard work over a long period of time in order to build a reputation. Maybe not necessarily be famous, but definitely build up a reputation that they are worthy to be listened to, that they're worthy of being paid attention to. Now, keep in mind that Mars in Taurus in the 10th house has an oppositional relationship with Scorpio in Uranus, or Uranus and Scorpio, excuse me. So Uranus and Scorpio in the 4th house, there could have been a bit of vengefulness when he was growing up. Okay, that 4th house is about the home that he grew up in. So these would have been people that he would have been deeply loyal to, and they would have been deeply loyal to him. But as soon as someone in the in-group betrayed somebody else, well, that's when the Scorpio stinger comes out. And this might have been quite sudden, in the sense that the injured party in the home where he was growing up in might have been quiet about being injured, and then suddenly they would have unleashed everything on this individual and been genuinely hurtful. This is a habit that he has learned and carried into adulthood if he hasn't chosen to break that tendency, and I don't believe that he has. We'll get into that later on with my cards, okay? But that Uranus and Scorpio has an oppositional relationship with that Mars in Taurus. He lashes out at people, and that has a way of destroying his reputation. He has a way of lashing out at people that he perceives have betrayed him in some particular way. And it chips away at his reputation, but again, because he's Kanye West, because he has this management and PR team, and because he has all of these motherly female figures who are also lovers protecting him, those effects on him are going to be softened, if not dissolved altogether. Okay, so there is that opposition, but that doesn't mean that that's something that he actually feels. Venus is also in Taurus in the 10th house. He's very comfortable being with famous women. I think of Kim Kardashian, for instance. He's very comfortable with being around them. And there's a sense of having them in his herd, so to speak. Like he has them caged, fenced in. They're under his control. And I can imagine with it being that close to Mars and Taurus, that he's comfortable when he feels like his women are under his control. Okay, so not a great placement considering everything else. Okay, but it was in his stars that he was going to be married to famous women, and that those women would have increased his fame as well. Okay, like I was saying earlier, there's a whole lot more going on with his birth chart. Let's just finish out with ascendant is in Cancer. He's going to he should, if things weren't out of whack for him right now. Ostensibly, he would have been most comfortable being within family, being in the home, taking care of children. That's not where he is right now. I know that much, okay? But that should have been the face that he presented to people if fame, if mental illness, if delusion hadn't taken over. Okay, his descendant is in Capricorn. He's attracted towards stable people. And again, with that Venus in Taurus, another earth sign, he's attracted towards women who still enjoy fame, but tend to be more earthy, salt of the earth, stay at home, stubborn, obstinate even, steady kinds of women. Okay. His midheaven, his MC point is in Aries, and it is the IC point, the Imam Coeli, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, is in Libra. Okay. So interesting relationships between planets all here together. I haven't covered anything. You know what I didn't cover was Moon in Pisces. So that's going to be a pretty comfortable place for the Moon to be in. And it's in his 9th house. And it does create squaring relationships with that Jupiter and that Sun in Gemini and with that Neptune in Sagittarius. Okay. So again, this is going to increase his propensity for delusion. It's going to, with that 9th house, that's about spirituality. I knew at one point that he was leading a Sunday service, if I'm not mistaken. And so there might have been a lot of energy that he pulled from that, a lot of spiritual energy. But this propensity for delusion is often masked with his, his ability to talk his way out of certain things. And people see that as, oh, he's being a genius, when in fact, this is someone who struggles with mental illness. From my particular perspective, knowing what we already know now, the stars that were in their places and the asteroids that were in their places at the time that he was born created the foundation, or the weather conditions, if you will, for him to lean towards deep mental illness. That didn't have to be the case, and I should also say that just because it created that those weather conditions doesn't mean that he doesn't have the free will to go in for cutting edge assistance with his mental health and heal himself. But that would take a leveling of his pride, and I don't know that he's willing to do that. Okay? So, that's a lot. I'm going to leave that there with this astrological chart. If you have some insights into his chart, as I've posted up as you follow the link, I would love to hear this. I would love to talk shop about this particular chart. With that, I'm going to move on into his cards. So at this point, I'm going to get into my questions. And my first question is, let me look at my notes. What is Kanye West here in this lifetime to accomplish? What is his soul contract involve? Okay. I will be working with the Light Seers Tarot, and I'm about to put in reversals. Sorry if I keep tapping the table where my mic is. There are the reversals, and there they go. How this works is I shuffle until Spirit asks me to stop, okay? And then we will accept the message that one of these cards popped out, and look what it is. It is Justice, and it's in reverse. We're going to put it down as the first card. So, Karma, Justice, Divine Justice is watching. Something else fell out. Two of Pentacles in reverse. Watching, recording behavior is recorded as behavior from the past, and his finances are way out of balance. He's not able to be playful the way that I associate playfulness with the Two of Pentacles. Being willing to play with your money. I don't see him as someone who feels comfortable. Again, with that Chiron and Taurus. He doesn't feel comfortable with where he is financially, materially right now. And that is Justice in reverse at work. Okay? I'm going to continue to shuffle, and if more cards slip out, then we'll take them too. I'm going to do a 3x3 spread, and I'll show you my cards as I pull them out. Okay. We're going to take a look at what's on top. We have the Four of Pentacles. His foundation is dissolving. This is about keeping things close to your chest, even being a bit selfish when it comes to material resources that make our bodies comfortable. So not only are things kind of wildly out of balance, is the foundation that he's built for himself is dissolving. And now I'm getting the word Nazi sentiments, okay? And I'm not monetized, so I can say that. I find it incredibly disturbing as someone in the LGBT community to see a celebrity so openly spouting Nazi beliefs when we're already dealing with a rise in anti-LGBT, anti-trans folks. We're dealing with a rise in those kinds of sentiments anyway. And people like Mr. West airing those sentiments so publicly and so freely seems to give permission, seems to make other people feel like that they have permission to be just as unhinged as Mr. West is. And justice does not frown. Justice frowns on this and hits him where it hurts the most. Remember how we talked about that Chiron being in Taurus, and especially with the 11th house, there may be things that the universe is doing to disrupt his sense of financial material security, and he may be lifting other people up that he has considered friends, past lovers. I'm getting Kim Kardashian, maybe seeing a flow of goodwill or material goodwill from the universe that makes him deeply insecure, and it's the universe's way of correcting what it is that he's doing. Now, whether or not his mental health allows him to see those lessons, I don't believe that to be the case, and I'm getting from Spirit that that's not the case at all. I feel like Spirit is indicating that he's just spiraling out of control, that he goes through these phases where he shoots up, again with that Neptune and Sagittarius suddenly shooting up, all these dreams shooting up, and then spiral down, manic depression, and then this up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, I need to do my research after I film, but I believe that he has bipolar disorder. I'm pretty confident that he's not treating it, allegedly for entertainment purposes only, okay? Based just on what I'm seeing and what I'm getting, the emotions, the feelings that I'm getting from Spirit, I feel like he is wildly out of control to the point that even people around him are kind of like, dude, you need to slow your roll. This is someone who has access to cutting-edge mental health treatments that are not available to the rest of, to civilians, to the collective. Yeah, the word privilege is coming to mind. I was kind of hesitating around that because he is still a man of color, and I need to respect that. I want to respect that. But as a VIP, but as a man, he has, as a heteronormative, cis heteronormative man, he has access to all kinds of stuff that a lot of other people could never dream of having access to, okay? I'm going to continue to work. We got more cards in reverse. The High Priestess is in reverse. The High Priestess has rejected him. When you look at the High Priestess, you kind of got to look at it from the angle of a querent who is coming to the High Priestess for access to knowledge. And she looks at you and decides whether or not that Queen of Swords energy filters you out and says, are you actually ready for this or are you not? With it being in reverse, the High Priestess or the Queen of Swords says you are not ready for the knowledge that I want, that you may want access to. That moon in Pisces in the 9th house may encourage him to head towards religious, spiritual knowledge, and in an ideal circumstance where he was genuinely seeking his best and his highest good, he could have all that and have more. It's a crying shame to me because he could be a genuine spiritual leader that would attract a lot of people to their own best and their highest goods, to their highest selves. But he's not using his power for that. His past lovers, his motherly figures, his PR team, his management team are protecting him from life lessons that he needs to learn in order to reach his best and highest good. But justice still finds a way, divine justice still finds a way to say, you're not admitted to the secrets which the universe holds, which you would have normally been allowed into. That moon in Pisces in the 9th house should be an ideal, perfect placement for someone to be a genuine spiritual leader who has incredible knowledge to share with other people. I say again, this is a crying shame, but that doesn't mean that it's like this forever. At any point, and I'm dropping High Priestess, at any point, he can choose, and he has to choose. Nobody's going to force him. And I wonder if there aren't people in his circle who aren't encouraging this, because it keeps their paychecks in line too. He can still change and become the spiritual leader that he is meant to be. That doesn't mean that he won't have still consequences to take care of. That won't mean that his birth chart changes and suddenly those oppositions and those squares go away. But what it could mean is that he could be an incredible spiritual leader if he chose to. Now, he would have a lot of work to do to walk back apologize for his anti-Semitism, to work against the Nazi sentiments that he has openly laid out in the public repeatedly, frequently even. 9 of Cups, landing on top of the 2 of Pentacles. Just frivolously spending money, losing money left and right. He doesn't give a flying fuck. Not paying attention to this at all. His management PR team might be paying attention, but they're along with the ride too, because their paychecks are dependent on his. So I don't know how much he cares right now. The money that he's just freely spending is just too good right now. The High Priestess says, you are not in a position, in a spiritual, emotional, mental position, to be admitted to the secrets that I have to reveal to you. I also note that the High Priestess, when it's reversed, can talk about deep lies that go deep. That again, we come back to those delusions. He's lying to himself. He feels like that he has the right to do what it is that he wants to do. But divine justice and the High Priestess say, no way in hell. Even if he is shielded from his consequences by the people around him, that doesn't mean that the universe won't still get to him. Freely, frivolously spending money right now. Ace of Cups in reverse. We've got another reversal card for him. Landing on top of the 4 of Pentacles in reverse. Utterly, utterly selfish love. Selfishness on top of selfishness. He only exclusively thinks of himself. I'm wondering if there aren't some real narcissistic tendencies in here, and I'm kind of sick to death of everyone saying this particular person has NPD. NPD is notoriously, from what I understand, notoriously difficult to actually literally diagnose. So I don't want to throw the N-word, narcissistic, onto someone who may not have that diagnosis. But this is someone whose selfishness runs very, very deep. And with that Saturn in Leo that we saw in the 2nd house, and also with that midheaven being in Aries, his fortune being in Aries, all that kind of stuff, this is someone who's accustomed to being famous, who's accustomed to being the king, and he's accustomed to people catering to that. Again, with that cradle aspect pattern, he's accustomed to the world being tailored to what he wants, to what he needs. He has something that he needs, and it's taken care of before he even voices it. He's got people running around like crazy looking to satisfy everything that they can possibly. Like, I wonder if there's not even a competition amongst the people around him to see who can satisfy his needs and wants the fastest before he can even talk about it. This is someone who is very comfortable being catered to. Again, I come back to the word privilege. We have here the Hanged Man landing on top of... I got my Fitbit hollering at me. Landing on top of the High Priestess and on top of the Justice card. Major arcanas landing all on top of each other, and I also note feminine people. In fact, I don't have any masculine entities in this particular read so far. Now, I do not believe that there is any gender in tarot. However, it does stand out to me. I'm getting the phrase, the future is feminine. Pluto in Aquarius may have some changes in store for him, and there may be a point where divine justice and the high priestess, the universe that would give him access to all kinds of amazing spiritual knowledge, says enough is enough. Either you stop your role, or we will do it for you. The universe will do it for you. And that might be a really rough wake-up call for him. He's in his 50s, I'm getting, and the universe is saying that he should have learned lessons by now that he refuses to learn, that he runs away from, because he doesn't want to face the consequences of his own behavior. That cradle aspect pattern also speaks to a certain childlikeness to him, even a childishness, and there is a distinction between the two. A childishness in the sense that, no, I'm not going to mess with those consequences. I'm going to run away, and then the PR and management team diffuse a situation while he runs away, okay? The universe is not going to permit this forever. They're waiting for him to stop his role, to notice that there's a problem and to turn things around, or it will do it for him. And I would not mess with karmic divine justice because it has a way of really correcting things. Okay? Why did I get Ariana Grande just then? I got Ariana Grande just then. She popped into my head. I wonder if something similar isn't happening in her universe right now. Okay? Alongside the Hangman, we've got the Four of Swords. Now, that sword energy is going to be about that a very heavy Gemini energy that we talked about. And that Jupiter and that Sun in Gemini had so many aspects across the entire birth chart that I can't help but think that he's going to be forced to give his wildly running mind a rest. And I wonder if, like, a mental health rehab isn't going to be something that stops him in his tracks and is coming from the divine universe. It is the kind of correction that he needs, but he may not feel like that in the moment. He may feel like he's being punished because he is being sent to a mental health facility that, you know, has the potential to heal him if he sees it that way. Right now, he's just doing his hedonistic stuff, but I don't believe that it's always going to be this way. I wonder if his wild spending habits aren't eventually going to bring him to the point where he can't spend anymore, and he's forced to go into a setting where he's has to realize how he has created his own downfall, how he has been his own worst enemy. And then we've got the Five of Cups. There are masculine entities in this particular deck, but I only have feminine energies, and that may be because there's mostly feminine entities in this particular deck, but I think it stands out to me, that's for sure. I do think that there's going to be a point where he deeply regrets the selfishness that he's put others through, that he's demanded that others go through in order to show their loyalty to him. Kind of like you would expect from a Saturn in Leo. I don't know that he learned the lessons that he needed to from his Saturn return, which was in Leo. And I wonder if he's not going to see the price that he paid. Here, I'll arrange them the way they appear on my table. I feel like he's going to pay a heavy price when he thinks about the damage that his ego, let's say that, maybe not like NPD officially totally, but definitely I wonder if he's not going to have a moment where he realizes how damaging his ego has been to the relationships that he counted on, that at one point that he genuinely treasured, possibly with his children popped up in my head just now. And I wonder if he hasn't all but destroyed his relationship with his kids. And I wonder if there isn't going to be a moment of reflection where he realizes, I've done permanent damage with my kids. He can apologize. He can do the things that he can do to make things right going forward, but the damage is still done. And that'll be another aspect of divine justice coming into play. So justice is for people who have been wronged, and there's the understanding that justice cannot ever make things completely right, because the completely right thing would have been for none of this damage to have happened at all. None of the damage that he inflicted to have happened at all. So the best course of action is for justice to make things right as best as possible. And he's going to have to see and realize what his kingliness and his demand for loyalty has done, what relationships it's wrecked over the years. The people around him, his kids most especially, don't deserve the behavior that he's inflicted on them. And I wonder if there won't be a point in the future when he will realize that, if indeed he goes to a mental health rehab facility. Excuse my voice, okay? No more from these particular cards. I've got some other questions that I want to pose. I'm going to pull these guys up and I'll be right back. So in summary, in answer to that question, what is he here in this lifetime to accomplish? I feel like he should have been a spiritual leader, especially with that ascendant in Cancer and such an intuitive sign with that sun in the 12th house, a deeply intuitive place, and then that moon in Pisces, that Neptune in Sagittarius. That's still a difficult aspect pattern of transit for him to be born into. But I do believe that he was meant to have been a spiritual leader, and I do believe that at one point he touched on that, but he made it too much about himself, and the universe rejected that leadership and said it's not genuine. You, Kanye West, are not seeking others' best and highest goods in addition to yourself. Your ego is separating you from what it is that the universe, your guides, your ancestors, your deities want you to do. And Donda appeared, her name appeared when I said ancestors. She's watching, and I do feel like she's disappointed to a degree. That'll tear me up. Her energy tears me up, okay? So, my next question is, what has been going on with him and his mental health? I am using the 7th Sphere Lenormand from Labyrinthos by Tina Gong. And again, I shuffle until Spirit asks me to stop. I'll be doing another 3x3, a portrait spread, in order to kind of get a comprehensive enough look at what's going on with his mental health. Again, with all those watery, intuitive placements, there is that potential for believing delusions, believing his own lies. And I'm getting from Spirit no more shuffling. We're going to take one from the bottom. We got Bear. And there is no lion in Lenormand, but this is about as close to a lion as we're going to get. This is about dominance. What about his mental health? That's the central theme. It's the pursuit of dominance, and it's costing him his mental health. Now, there are other disorders, I do believe, within him that need to be treated with medication, with therapy, and that kind of thing. But ego and pride and pursuit of dominance at the cost of even his mental health is what is driving a lot of this. We're going to start with the top row. We've got the Anchor, and I'll be sure to take a picture of this before I pull it up. Anchor. Crossroads. Choices. Anchor is about permanence, like we're at least staying in a particular area for a long time. Long-term choices that move quickly when it comes to consequences. This is the third card for the top row, okay? I'll be putting down cards next to the central theme. We've got him. He appears in his own Lenormand reading. He is his own worst enemy. And on the other side of Bear appears the Fox. About selfishness, seeking himself first. Again, I'm not here to diagnose anybody. That's not my place, okay? But the selfishness, the self-obsessedness is very strong with this one. Donda wanted to show how much she believed in her son. I believe when she got him that time in that recording studio when he was a teenager. I could be completely wrong. I swear to God I remember that, though. And that's a badass mom move. He took it the wrong directions, though. He had free will. He has free will. Okay. We've got Key. Now this is interesting. We're looking at the third row. That's the first card of the third row. And already I'm looking at the past. Anchor, Animus, and Key. This is someone who is going to be revolutionary in the music world, in the VIP world for a long time. Just right off the bat, you're able to read that like a sentence. So I've got book in the second column for the third row. That's about secrets, that's about education, that's about higher education, it can be about spiritual secrets if that's something that you want to access, for instance. And here is Stork. So, I've already read the past. We can look at the present. What's presently going on is that he is choosing to be the dominant figure. He's choosing to sweep people aside at will when it makes him comfortable. With that bear landing on the house of the tree, this is someone who has been growing this for a long time. The seeds were planted years, even decades ago, and have continued to grow into something far more malignant. Now with that book, what will be revealed in the future? Okay. Key, book, and Stork. So the key is going to open some doors to some secret knowledge, and it's going to reveal how he just repeats cycles. That's what's going on subconsciously. Now, I was looking at past, present, and future. I apologize. I've switched into the conscious, subconscious, and the reality of the situation, okay? I'm sorry if I'm going all over the map. But this is about choosing secrets, choosing to hold back the seat. Like, you know what, we talked about the high priestess in reverse. He's choosing to keep things from the public that would show how much of a bully he is, with that bear being the central theme, okay? There's secret hidden knowledge that he's chosen to avoid because he's taken on the path of, I will be king. I will be dominant in this, I'm getting this from Spirit, from this bitch's life, from my stupid fucking manager again. This is not stuff that I would say at all, but he's definitely in a very destructive mindset, and I'm tying that back to the Two of Pentacles that's in reverse. Destroying it's not even playful anymore. He's openly destroying, streams of material comfort, money, for instance, because he's just in a self-destructive phase. But he also wants to take things away from others that he feels like they haven't earned. That ties back into his Chiron in Taurus in his 11th house, quite literally. When he sees people that he perceives to be more successful than him, he does what he can to destroy it, to sweep it away. And this is interesting. I'm getting that time when he jumped up on the stage with Taylor Swift and took the microphone away or something like that. I don't remember the clip exactly, but he said I'm gonna interrupt or something like that. Beyonce should have won this. It ties back there, and it's been going on for quite some time. He was willing to do it to Taylor Swift. He's willing to do it to Kim Kardashian. He's willing to do it to pretty much anyone that he perceives to be in his way, a deeply destructive individual. And I did see with those cards, with that Five of Cups, that there is going to be a point where he deeply regrets how selfish, how self-centered and self-obsessed he was. It's not going to make sense to him how he got to that particular point, because that's unfortunately the nature of delusions. Excuse me. In the future, we're looking at this third and final column. We've got Rider, Fox, and Stork. So, right away, you can just see some really tight cycles of manic depression, and of just absolutely thinking of himself. Something from the universe corrects him in some way, and he just gets right back on track and continues to be, to stay in old habits that do not serve him, that do not serve others. It's also about news. Now, this is interesting. You would typically think of storks as bringing babies, and that Rider also bringing news. There's going to be people who talk about how deeply selfish he was more in the future. More people are going to be talking about him, and it's going to start to chip away at that foundation that he's built for himself, kind of like what we talked about with the question just before this. Consequences coming riding on in, and he's not going to be able to stop them. With the stork, that's about migration patterns, and specifically about cycles that repeat but slightly different every single time. He's going to find ways to continue to take care of himself in selfish ways, the most selfish ways. And that for the foreseeable future, until he can get into mental health rehab, that's what it's going to continue to look like. So, I've already, we can look at I've already talked about the subconscious, about Key, Book, and Stork, about something revolutionary. Well, he's the revolutionary aspect that arrived in the past, but subconsciously, there's a revolution building against him. It's coming from that divine justice in reverse. There's something building up that is coming about of his behavior, his pretty consistent behavior that only changes slightly over time, more to benefit him than anything else. Gradually, something's being unlocked. Secrets will be released if they aren't being put out there right now. And that's the thing. Subconsciously, he doesn't realize that he's giving that off. In all his kingliness and wanting to be on top and his deep selfishness, he tells on himself in ways that other people in his circle who have been hurt by him cannot. So, subconsciously, we've got that. On the conscious level, we got Anchor, Crossroad, and Rider. He's made pretty permanent choices that have some really far-reaching and fast-moving consequences for him. And consciously, he's making these particular choices, but he's not thinking about this in the long term. He's very much someone who thinks in the moment. If he thinks about anything in the long term, it's about, what can I do to get myself more bitches coming from the universe. He wants to grab power, and it feels like grabbing women specifically is how he feels like he gathers more power. My attention is being brought to that Pluto in Libra in the 4th house. There may have been something that he learned in early childhood that may have tied back into having his idea of having lots of women around him, gave him a sense of power and allowed men around him to see him as the king of women, at least, right? Look at this very beautiful woman on his arm, for instance. He must have something about him that I don't. He gets a kick out of creating insecurity in others. But there are consequences for that kind of showboating as well. The reality of the situation, the middle row, you've got Animus, Bear, and Fox. It's interesting. The Animus with my particular card set is facing both the Bear and the Fox. He's going to have to face down the consequences of his behavior. This is all self-serving in the sense that being a bully ultimately brings about a feeling of security, a feeling that I'm doing it, I'm dominating, I'm pushing people around who deserve to be pushed around because they deserve to be punished or disciplined for whatever I feel like they did to me. There are going to be consequences for that, but that's the present reality, what he's doing right now. That's what his mental health aspects are pressing him to do right now. And of course, he has full responsibility up for this. He can choose to stop this at any point, but the question is, will he? When will he? And I don't know that he will do so for a while. But that previous question, those tarot cards that I pulled up from the Light Seer's Tarot indicate that at some point in the future there will be that aspect of divine justice saying, no more. The Hanged Man is now in reverse. You are being forced by us, the universe, your ancestors, your guides, your deities. You're being forced to stop what it is you're doing. And you're going to be forced to go into Four of Swords mode, where your mind gets a break. Your racing mind. So, no more from this. I'm going to move on to my next question, my last question, and we'll call it a wrap there. So, my third and final question is, what messages would Spirit like to send in order to lead Kanye West to his best and his highest good? I am using the Claves Astrologica de Iris Sacra by Tina Gong, also from Labyrinthos. And once again, I will be shuffling until Spirit asks me to stop. I'll be doing another 3x3, maybe a little bit less than 9 cards. It depends on how many Spirit wants me to pull out. Take one from the bottom. Well, looky there. It's the house associated with Gemini, if you go by the whole sign astrology, intellect, the third house. To do with communication, to do with information gathering, lower levels of education, but it's associated with Mercury and with Gemini as well. And we saw that he had a bunch of Gemini placements, okay? So let's put together another 3x3 spread. That's the middle theme. We have here the 7th house of partnerships. That's of love interests, like marriages, for instance. That's also to do with enemies and with business partners, okay? These are the people who are closest to us, whether we want them to be or not, okay? That's going to be on the top row, the first card of the top row. We have here the sun or soul. Okay, I'm sorry that my camera is so shitty. If I block my face, will it look better? But right away, top row. He takes up all the energy, all the space in the relationships that he's in. It's not just his marriages, his love relationships. It's to do with his business partnerships too. And even with his enemies feel eclipsed by his energy. He just gives off a very powerful, mysterious kind of edge that you would expect from someone with their Pluto in Libra. And also with that cradle aspect pattern. People ask, how does he get away with this stuff? Right there, you've got soul. He just does. He just gets away with stuff. Waning gibbous moon. So this is the part where we kind of tend to take stock of what it is that we could have done in the past cycle, but this is not someone who reflects, who does not reflect on the past. But it also gives a sense of waning energy. This is the full moon has already happened, and now we're headed towards the new moon. This is someone whose energy is waning, and that's interesting that it appears right next to the sun card, the sun card. His time on stage is decreasing. It's waxing. Not yet. It will after he enters rehab and comes out of it a whole different person. And again, he's here on Earth, I suspect, to lead others in spiritual endeavors, to lead other people to their best and their highest good. But right now, his sun needs to be, his sun sign, Gemini, needs to be decreased. His intellect, his genius needs to be seen less as intellect and genius and more as delusion and mental health gone wildly out of control. This needs to happen right now. And it looks like the people in his life, top row once again, the people in his life who are closest to him are going to be able to recognize that and say enough is enough. You are way too out of control and you run the risk of harming yourself, not just others. I feel like PR management lovers are the kind of people to diffuse a situation if someone does get hurt. On either side of the intellect card, we have waxing gibbous, waxing crescent. So like I was saying earlier, here we have the idea that his partners have given him the foundation to grow, to wax strong, if you will, to grow from a new moon into more of a full moon. But this is the phase where they're making he is making plans, and you can kind of see that having happened in the past. Together with the intellect card, this is someone who is able to think more clearly, with the women kind of acting as a focuser, if you will, for his creative energies. So I'm coming back to what messages would Spirit like to send. He needs to allow the people closest to him in his life to guide his intellect, and that's going to mean that he needs to humble himself. Also, he's going to need to allow his son to wane just a bit so that he can gather new energy to get ready for a new cycle. He needs to allow that to happen. I don't know that he will. I feel like it's more likely that the universe will force him to take several steps back, and then from there he can grow again. Now remember, this is ideally speaking. He can choose a whole different path altogether, a more destructive, self-destructive path, and none of this will come true. This is what he should do in order to live up to his best and his highest good. Doesn't mean that he'll actually do it. Here we've got Aquarius. Now we are currently going through Pluto in Aquarius, and we will go through Pluto in Aquarius until 2042, 2043. So this is allowing things to change, and suddenly and drastically, when it comes to the power that he's enjoyed for so long. And that means allowing it. Now, whether or not he's going to actually allow it remains to be seen. I doubt that he will. Again, I think that the universe is going to force him to let that energy in. But something we need to note, what we've got right here, I'm trying to gather my cards, sorry. The intellect, the third house, and Aquarius appear together. That's all air energy. If he can choose to take a step back, then he can start to grow again from a whole new place. I suspect that new moon kind of energy would be coming from rehab, because I don't have it in my spread so far. That doesn't mean that it won't appear. But if he takes a chance to rest his mind specifically, that's where he's going to find a whole lot of his power gathering once again for another comeback, if you will, and the kind of comeback that he's meant to have. A less selfish one, a less self-destructive, and a less destructive on others kind of energy. We have here the partner to the soul card. We have the Terra, the earth card, kind of Tarian energy. And it's going underneath this waxing crescent, 7th house of partnerships energy. So he needs to lean into his Tarian energy, but also remember how he's got his descendant in Capricorn. He's attracted to people who are more obstinate, more stubborn, and also potentially more selfish, okay? But he's meant to allow those people into his life to act as a force of grounding, because he desperately needs some degree of grounding in his life. He has virtually none because he doesn't allow it. He pushes it away. In fact, he tries to destroy it. So the advice here is to allow himself to be grounded by people who have more sense, who are more smart, who have more stable energy than him. Allow that to flow into his partnerships, the people who are closest to him, and he's going to be a whole lot more happy. He's going to be able to create from a whole new place. And remember how his Saturn in Leo was in his 2nd house? There it is. Of the things that are valuable to him. That's about financial resources. That's about the things that make our bodies comfortable. It's coming up alongside this Terra, this earth card. Now, he needs to be deeply grounded, and in that case, he'll see finances come towards him. If he's meant to be a spiritual leader, of course, him being a grounded spiritual leader is going to bring all kinds of material comfort to him that he never thought possible. That would be cool, but whether or not he will do it remains to be seen. He still has free will. Again, this is what he should do in order to reach his best and his highest good. And then we've got more earthy energy. We've got Virgo, the sign of the harvest, the beginning of the harvest, in fact, reaping what he has sowed. When it comes to the damage that he's done, Virgo's going to ask him to take a look at what he has sowed and ask him to reap those consequences, whether he wants to or not. And Aquarius demands that too. Aquarius is about the collective energy, and this is someone who is anything but focused on the collective, and even on the 7th house of partnerships. He's anything but focused. He's not focused on anyone but himself. And this energy of being deeply selfish is waning. What is growing is deep change, and Virgo saying it's time to reap the consequences of your actions. Pluto and Aquarius is going to be a powerful one, and I suspect that we're going to see things radically change for him, at least over the next 20-ish years. And both Aquarius, Virgo's going to encourage that behavior too, but it's also about looking at the consequences of his actions with an understanding that he did this. Nobody else made this happen. It wasn't just some kind of God fucking with him or anything like that. These are things that he did. And that's going to be something that's going to be difficult for him to wrestle with. Someone who's deeply into his ego like him is going to have a hard time looking at the consequences of stuff that they've been avoiding for a long time. So, with that, Spirit says no more, that this reading's gone on long enough. If you want to discuss any part of this reading, I'd love to do it with you in the comments. Let me know. Otherwise, have a great day. Thank you for watching.